3, 1.
Welcome back to UPress Play, a sports show produced by FAU Student Media. I'm JD, and joined alongside me is Maddox and Cameron. It's a little throwback to what we were used to pretty much over a year ago. And yeah, we're back. We haven't done a show in about, I want to say, 3 weeks due to various different hurricanes that Florida's been hit with, along with me and Cameron starting a new class. But we're back. We got, I want to say, maybe like 5 or 6 more shows before me and Cameron dip out of here for graduation. But we're back, and we're here to talk some ball. So, boys, how we doing? How's it been in this this hiatus that we really wasn't our choice, but you know, we're back doing the show.
Yeah, no, I've been good. Just getting to that part of the semester, we just talked about it, where it's just like stuff is just stacking up. But it's good to get back here with you guys and talk some FAU, talk some pro stuff. So yeah, let's get into it. Maddox, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Same as you were mentioning, how like right now we're at that time of the semester we're like after midterms, but still having some classes, some assignments to do, some projects to work on. But other than that, man, I'm just getting excited, especially since the basketball season is about to start. So a lot of games in the call.
Yeah. We'll be getting into those topics soon. But I remember when we were talking about college football coming back, we were talking about how like, man, we're so back. And now that my true favorite sport, basketball, is coming back into season, it's just it's gonna be a great time. And I was talking to my dad about it. You know, college basketball is such a great time because there's literally a game every single day. Like if you're a real basketball head and you're not just watching Power 5 conferences, if you want to get into that Patriot League, if you want to watch some MAC action, you know, there's going to be college basketball pretty much every single day. And I was also kind of saying that I was talking to somebody who works here in the student media office, Pete, how watching mid-major football pales in comparison to watching mid-major basketball, because I just feel like the level of talent isn't really there in football. But when it comes to basketball, it's just like anybody at any given night could have a crazy night, and it's worth watching, in my opinion. But as we always do with the beginning of our shows, we're going to get into our FAU housekeeping. This is where we get into all our FAU topics. Since we missed a couple weeks, there's a few things for us to catch up on. I want to say last time we spoke, FAU was coming out of was during their bye week.
I want to say, yeah, it was when they were like in their bye week going into North Texas.
Yeah,
unless I'm mistaken.
Yep, going into North Texas, where they held if my math is correct, a 2-3 record. And since then, FAU has had 2 pretty heartbreaking and gut-wrenching losses. FAU blew a 10-point lead late against North Texas Mean Green in a 41-37 loss, where the offense actually seemed to show some life and actually seemed to play pretty inspired, but regardless fell short. And last week, or this past Saturday, FAU lost to UTSA for their 3rd straight season conference game, to drop their 3rd season conference game of the season. They currently stand at 2-5 and 0-3 in conference play, going into their next bye week, where next week they'll be playing the University of South Florida, who isn't really having too hot of a season themselves. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like every time we bring up FAU football, we all just kind of, you know, look at each other, scratching our heads and kind of clawing at things to talk about, because I'll speak for myself here. I'm kind of getting tired of just talking about what the team needs to do better. But I don't know, where's your mindset at when it comes to A, covering FAU football, and B, just as a student who goes here, just where's your mindset at with the program?
I don't know. That's a hard question to ask, because it's like you said, it's like 2 different like hats to wear. But wearing my like unbiased journalist hat, what's really frustrating, one, let's talk about North Texas. Like you said, I think what you said about the offense was an understatement. That was Cam Fancher's best game as an FAU Owl by leaps and bounds. If I remember correctly, it was 351. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception.
Yeah, I think
I might be a little off. I don't have the stats right in front of me.
Career high, 351 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushing for 69 yards, and pretty much producing 420 of the total 519 yards on offense. So yeah,
correct. Thank you for that. But to have that and collapse in the last 2 minutes is just, I really was in that press conference after that game. You know, listening to them talk, that's some of the maddest players I've ever talked to in my life. So to lose that game, I think I don't want to say nail in the coffin because they're still bowl eligible at that point. But it really doesn't surprise me that after that game, they go to UTSA. The offense reverts back to the previous form we saw, you know, and they lose. Like, after losing like that at North Texas and, you know, in the context of how they've looked the entire season, you know, dropping that game at UTSA really doesn't, and how they lost it really doesn't surprise me at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, because I was calling that game for radio of that the North Texas and FAU game, and I was mentioning at the very end of the game, also like right before we went off air, I was mentioning that I don't see it as like bad for FAU, even though like how North Texas
lost to North Texas.
Yeah, when FAU lost to North Texas, because I felt like the team looked complete. The first time we've seen this season, the team looked complete. We knew the defense was going to be good throughout the entire season. The main question was who will be the guy for receiver, and will Fancher, like with that recent sharing snaps at Case and Wiseman, would that wake something up in him? Where it's like, okay, now I was supposed to be the guy, then I had to like revert back to being just sharing snaps. Now they brought me back to being the guy. I had to wake up in this moment and take this opportunity for granted. And he had a great game, again, career high. And even that kind of got me to think, okay, well, the next game against UTSA, they play the same way they did, then I feel like FAU will win that game. And of course, I reverted back to my old ways and saying, okay, there's a high with the team. Okay, I'm going to follow that as well. Being like, this team could definitely win. I think most of us who did our predictions were all saying that FAU was going to win. And then they lost to UTSA. So I felt like they were just reverting back to their old ways with the offense against UTSA. But after that North Texas game, I felt like this was a complete team. There's a bunch of upside. Sure, they gave up like 41 points. However, North Texas had one of the best, statistically one of the best offenses in the country. Cam Fancher played better than Chandler Morris, the quarterback for North Texas. He's like one of the best quarterbacks statistically in the country and in the conference. And North Texas, as a team, they just wanted more. And you can see that. Like, you can do everything you can possibly do correctly, and the other team could just want more and do it better. And I felt like, of course, FAU did kind of blow that like 10-point lead. They were up 34-24 around like 8 minutes left, close to the end of the game. And then they gave up those extra like 2 touchdowns. So definitely like some downside to that. But I felt like just looking at how those 2 games were, I felt the North Texas game was some upside to it, even though they lost, because it looked like a complete team. But they didn't. But again, they reverted back to their old ways against UTSA. But this is why I predicted too, was those first 2-3 games coming off of their bye week are be the most crucial. Now they're back into a bye week. Again, I think is very very great timing, because USF, even though again not as great as they were last season records-wise, still a tough team to play against, and it's a homecoming game too, so we'll make sure to get everything correct, everything to work out properly leading to that game, especially since we'll make sure the offense goes back to what they were against North Texas.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
But like, I understand what you're saying about the North Texas game, in that, you know, that was their like best they've looked all season. But I kind of like, my idea was like kind of like the other edge of the sword. Like, your quarterback outplayed one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Your offense played as good as they possibly could. Your defense held one of the best offense in the conference in check, and you still lost. Mm-hmm. That was like kind of my, you know, reaction to that. And it felt like a game that like, how do you recover from that? But I mean, I guess I understand what you're saying, because don't throw something. A bowl game is still technically in play. But after you drop that to UTSA, like stacking that on top of it, like demoralizing North Texas loss, even though the schedule, like looking at it now, is very easy. Charlotte is not great. That's an understatement. Temple hasn't been great either. Those are 2 winnable games. USF's definitely a winnable game. You talked about how they have been really disappointing this year. But I don't know. They're in like a slump right now that's going to be hard to get out of.
Yeah, I think it's very optimistic of you to look
I
at
know.
this.
I'm saying
No,
statistically.
Statistically, yeah. If we're being
they still
being
they're
literal
able
here,
to make a
they
bowl
are
game
technically able to make a bowl game, but I just don't see it for them. I just don't see
Neither
it for them.
Neither do I.
That would require you to
win
not
4 or 5.
Win, 4 or 5.
Or is that 4 or 5? That'd be.
Yeah, you can't lose 2 more games for the rest of the season. And even if you are through, I guess, quote unquote, the most difficult part of your schedule, the team just hasn't shown anything that's worthy of putting together, a winning performance when you look at their only 2 wins of the season. And this is why it's just, not so really fun to talk about it, is we kind of just keep repeating the same things. Is their 2 wins are coming off an FCS against an FCS opponent and an opponent that lost to an FCS opponent in FIU. So there's just really nothing to be encouraged about going into the rest of the season. And after that North Texas game, I think I definitely appreciate your insight about what the athletes had to say.
It wasn't a lot.
Which wasn't a lot.
And that was my takeaway. Some of the shortest answers I've ever got in an interview.
Reading Alexander Tabar's is one of our staff writers for the University Press, his recap for the ETS game, reading a quote here from redshirt junior Jaden Williams. "It's frustrating letting games like this go. It's very frustrating." After they gave up 2 unanswered touchdowns to pretty much seal the fate of that game.
And I don't hold that against, the athletes. I just think that goes to show just like the point they're at, in the season, or at least after that loss, the point they were at.
Right, and you obviously don't want to say that, after 1 game in the season, the team or the program as a whole is punted on anything, but there's a huge difference when you're just playing for pride versus actually playing for, a spot in a bowl game or, competing for an AAC championship. But it's just, I think the FAU fans have the right to, have their complaints and their gripes with the program as a whole. I had a friend who was covering the North Texas game, and he was sending me pictures of the attendance, and I
was there. It was brutal.
They didn't look good.
Brutal.
And just the worst part about that is that it's one of those games where the attendance is brutal and the offense puts on a show. At the very least, it was a very entertaining game. But when you end with a blown 10-point lead, it just doesn't. Any of those fans that did attend that game, there's absolutely zero incentive to want to attend another one for the rest of the season.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm interested to see how that last 2 minutes go, with a 50% fuller crowd. You know what I mean? I don't like. It's not like some people might take it like too seriously, but like in a situation like that, having a crowd behind you helps. At least a little bit.
This is a good point, but I mean,
I get what you're saying. Wins will get people there.
Right, and that's just my mantra when it comes to the topic of conversation when it comes to attendance for FAU football games is that wins are going to be the only thing that get people in the seats, and when you have nothing, when social media and publications have nothing to report, but oh man, just another FAU loss, like there's just not much to build upon. And it's been, just to be frank, it's been a disappointing 2 seasons for Coach Herman, and I just I don't know where we go from here. The next game being against South Florida, the only thing that I'm encouraged about is like Maddox mentioned, is that they are still a very competitive team. They did bite off a little bit more than they could chew, in my opinion, in regards to their non-conference schedule. So that's why I feel like their record isn't necessarily, a great example of how good that team actually is. But the fact that it is a South Florida game, attendance is going to be great for both schools. People from Tampa coming over here to watch the game, and it being homecoming, there should hopefully be some FAU fans. And it's a 7:30 game, so we'll have to see how that goes. But
I think also because it's scheduled for a Friday, and so I think classes end earlier on days of the week where there is a game. So I think also a little more incentive as well. I think that's why they chose at the homecoming game on a Friday. I bring fans in like, hey, class is done early. You can come to this game. I have time to go to this game.
But right, exactly. You're making initiatives like that, and this is the attitude that the students have for the football game. So, maybe you're just letting students get out of class early to go hit up that tailgate and then go home right after, which seems to be the case since I've been here at school. But it'll be interesting to see how the team plays, because the fact that they are coming off another bye week, that North Texas game before that was a bye week as well, and that maybe was a bit of a reason for why the offense looked as good as it did with a week of preparation. So I think if FAU can get a win there against South Florida, there might be a little morale boost for everybody as a whole. But I mean, you never want to say that the season's done, in late October, but I just, if you're an FAU football player, what are you playing for?
Trying to get some tape to
get that bowl
for the
game.
NFL. Yeah, trying to get some tape for like an NFL draft or something. I mean, you could possibly.
Yeah.
Get
tape for another school.
I understand what you're saying, but I doubt there's like any quit like in that locker room, because Coach Tom Herman's like an experienced coach, and I think if something like that, like I don't get a sense like of that, like when you talk to players. I know I mentioned how like demoralized a lot of them seemed after North Texas, but you got to understand like that's such a weird situation they're put in, where you just lost the game, you're exhausted, and you get like thrown in front of like 20 people you don't know and just get grilled with questions. That's what causes a lot of that. But like when talking at media availability today, I don't get like any sense of like, oh, there's nothing left to play for. I think maybe as fans, who are not there and haven't invested like entire years worth of practice, whatever, maybe you can think about it like that. But I doubt there's any type of feeling like that floating around the locker room, and I haven't got a sense of that.
Well, it's encouraging to hear that. It doesn't seem like anyone's really hanging their heads in the locker room, but yeah, I mean, it is curious to see how the rest of the season goes. If the team continues to play inspired, and if they keep finding reasons to fight, I think that's great. And there is always a possibility that they could put together a 2-game, 3-game stretch of some really good football. But
especially though with that the next 2 games, which is on Friday, and then the next week on Thursday is again a very short week for FAU coming off of a bye week. So those 2 games are going to be crucial, even though like USF's not been doing that great this year compared to last year when FAU and USF met, nor like East Carolina. I mean, they also aren't doing that great this season as well. But you're seeing how this team has played this year, and also my experience as a student and as a journalist, seeing how over the past couple of years with FAU football, going against teams like, oh, that should be an easy win, and then losing. Like last year, I remember against East Carolina had like 1 or 2 wins on the season, like 1 win on the season. FAU handed them their 2nd win of the season. Their first win was against the FCS team. So that really doesn't bring too much like optimism. So seeing like, okay, USF not doing that great versus ECU on the road, also not doing that great. You would think like, okay, those 2 games FAU should win, but now it's like, okay, back to back. So and every game now seems like it's very most crucial for this football team.
Well, we'll definitely have more to say about FAU football next week. We'll probably dig in a little bit deeper into South Florida, because that's always a big-time rivalry that everyone looks forward to. But getting on to some more exciting news, FAU basketball, we are so back this week, this Saturday. Florida Atlantic will be playing their first exhibition match that will be open to the public and will actually be against other competition. We got to see a little bit of what the team looked like in a team setting with Paradise Madness, which was a pep rally-esque event that the basketball programs have been doing here at FAU for the last 4 years, and this is going to be the first time Saturday against St. Leo University, where we'll get to see some live action of the team against other competition. Probably, obviously, not going to be going at 100%. Since this game will not count against their record, it's simply an exhibition, and just to kind of gauge how fan attendance will be for the first game of the season, and to see how the teams gel together. But Cameron, you and I were at Paradise Madness, where we got to see a little bit of the blue and white scrimmage.
Yeah.
So did you have any thoughts on that team? I know that you were there. You wrote up a little recap for 247 Sports, and I had plenty of thoughts that I wrote about in my most recent article after Coach Jacobs held his first weekly press conference of the season. But I'll let you take the floor first. What'd you like? What'd you see? And what were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it was just fun going to like the game as like a fan.
Yeah.
Just sitting in the stands. I haven't done that in a while. That was fun. But, you know, my biggest takeaways is who we kind of should expect to stand out. I know both me and you agreed that our, you know, like game ball went to Matas.
Vocatitis. Maddox, my radio guy.
We're just gonna go with Matas for now, just because that's easier.
Yeah, Matas.
He was leading scorer, leading rebounder, and you know just looked really comfortable out there. And you know I figured some of like the international players early on just might take a little time to get acclimated, just because they're like going through a huge change right now. They're going from playing, you know, a different kind of brand of basketball overseas to college basketball. They're going from living in Europe to living in America. It's like all a very big transition. But, you know, he looked great out there. Another guy I was really impressed with I wrote about was Nico Moretti. He looked really, really comfortable, you know, like handling the ball, controlling the offense. He looks really, really quick, you know, in and out of his cuts with the ball. He had a bunch of really, really good passes. Caleb Glenn, he was another one. I want to say he ended up with 12. I'm sorry, they didn't post a box score.
We have no official stats on the event. It's just simply going
Keeping,
off our eye test.
So I want to say he had 12. So he was another one. He had a couple really good shots. My one takeaway is that I'm not going to say that. Not very many people shot the ball incredibly well. I don't remember. Like one thing I wrote was how, you know, Jacobs talked about one person who improved shooting the ball was Baba. We didn't get to really see that a lot. My count was that he was 0 for 1 from 3. 0 for 1 from 3. But he still had a bunch of really, really nice looking plays. That up and under layup really impressed me. Like we heard about his ability to be really athletic with his size. We did get to see that. Wanted to see him shoot the ball a little bit more. So those are my kind of flaming takeaways. You know, Matas looked really good. Nico looked really good. Baba and Caleb Glenn, those were, from what I'm remembering, again, we were doing everything, you know, off the dome, just kind of taking a look. But I'll say that I really like, we wanted to talk about starting lineup, so I'll kind of like merge into that a little bit. I really don't know. I think he has a lot of options to go with because, like I said,
well, you mind if I interject?
Go ahead, go ahead before I do that. Go ahead.
Before we get into lineups, because I think that's the thing that's most curious at the top of everyone's mind.
True.
Since
Go ahead.
Our whole starting lineup from last year is gone, and there's really no returning players to build upon. So Coach Jacobs has the freedom to do whatever he wants. Definitely some great points there. I thought Caleb Glenn looked really good. Playing that 3 spot, you know, he was sharing the floor with Trey Carroll and Montes Kochanis. Just to differentiate the two, Montes Kochanis is the 6'11" big who shoots a little bit more threes, and the team is referring to him as Kocha, which is just the short version for his last name. And then Matas, how do you say it?
Vocatitis.
Matas Vocatitis, that is who they're referring to as Matas. It's literally the same name except adding an N in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Caleb Glenn played with Kocha and Trey in that front court, and I thought he looked pretty good there because he played a lot of power forward at Louisville. He's a little bit undersized for what we consider the traditional power forward. He's around 6'6". Height-wise, he's a big dude, though. He's a built dude. He has definitely a positive wingspan. And Coach Jacobs has said in press before that was a big emphasis in their recruiting trail is to find guys with positive wingspans. So he looked really good, athletic. I think he had one breakaway steal on the fast break for a dunk, and I don't think that might be his patented move on defense. And I think anytime that over the course of the season where FAU is going to need a stop, I think he's definitely going to be that point of attack defender. He was great on the ball, especially guarding Nicolo coming up the court. He did look great and comfortable running that offense, having that European style basketball. His brother played 3 seasons at Texas Tech University when they had
Won a natty.
Yeah. Did he really?
I'm pretty sure, unless I'm mistaken.
I know that based on what I remember, they did have like a pretty crazy March Madness run.
Maybe not. Maybe
I don't think Texas Tech made it. I know. Like,
am I mistaken?
Possibly. But,
Go ahead with your spiel. I'll do some fact checking.
Another guy who really impressed me at Paradise Madness was Ken Evans Jr. Anytime you're recruiting a senior guard, you kind of want that veteran presence there. And I thought he looked cool, calm, and collected. You know, he got to the spots that he wanted to. And I think he has a lot of potential to be that three-level scorer that FAU is looking for. Because, you know, obviously with the new way offenses run and the way that Jackus may want to play, where he wants to shoot a lot of threes. And when you have the privilege of having 2 7-footers, you obviously want to maybe play through them. To have a guy who can still work that mid-range spot, that middle of the court, I think that's really beneficial. So, you know, I think down the stretch, if it's a close game and you need a guy to kind of get into that late game offense, I think he's definitely going to be the go-to guy. And then, yeah, I think like Cameron said, Matas was just one in a way the best player on the court. And to your point about, you know, seeing how they settle in the weekly press conference with Jackus on Monday, his main takeaway was that he said, and quote, the main thing is you just never know what you had till you play in public. So obviously this being the first time that all the players get to you know, experience the LE with a somewhat filled crowd. It was nowhere near sold out, but you know, definitely lots of people there in attendance. The Prowlers are always there, and a good amount of people from the community too definitely did show up. So it'll be interesting to see the turnout for the Saturday game. But being that it's an exhibition, and maybe the people that are aware of that, maybe they'll, you know, pass on that until we have the first regular season game at home. But yeah, Coach Jacobs said that both Matas and Kocha, that he said those two are the ones the coaching staff was least certain about how they would react to playing on the court. And they both look comfortable. Obviously, Matas had a better game than Kocha. I believe it was the blue team that he was Kocha was on. They didn't have like the greatest night, but I don't believe any of those.
I think the team-wise, they you know, kind of, I think it was like 25 they lost by at the end. Again, like, they don't post scores or anything. And
it was a scrimmage, but Kocha did look good. He did hit his 1-3.
I would say his 1-3 was splashed. It was just like canned easy. So that, and I want to say that was like the only 3 he attempted. So that's like a little reassuring. But Maddox, did you have any thoughts about the scrimmage?
Yeah, I wasn't able to attend as a fan or as media. I did though. Like, I remember I commented on a post on Twitter like a day ago, talking about like my prediction for the starting lineup. I'm gonna change it a little bit just from hearing from some of the stuff you guys mentioned. But if we're able to just go, everyone's starting now doing our like.
Well, let me read this quote by Coach Jacobs based on starting lineups, because I knew that was going to be the main concern in regards to, you know, going into this exhibition match. Asking him about the lineups, he had said that him and the coaching staff don't plan on making any, quote, big decisions based on the performances from Paradise Madness. So, you know, I think the biggest thing that I was curious about is what the guard rotation was going to look like, because when you think about Kiki Tandy and Ken Evans Jr., who are both seniors, they're probably guaranteed some playing time, being that it's their last year of eligibility. Leland Walker, and then that leaves Leland Walker, Nicola Moretti, and then Devin Vanterpool, who actually had a pretty good showing at the Paradise Madness scrimmage. You know, interested in seeing on what that rotation was like. And what Coach Jacobs said is that, you know, if you were to come to practice 5 different times, you would probably see 5 different guards who had a great practice. So it seems to be that there's a lot of depth here. And pretty much what Jacobs was communicating to the media is that they're more concerned on lineup combinations than they are quote-unquote starting lineups. Yeah. So this Saturday, they're actually going to start with 2 different starting lineups in both halves. So I'm not sure if that's going to be 2 different combinations or 2 actual 5 completely different players on the court.
I'd say different combos, no?
Well, I think maybe it'll depend on how the flow of the game goes, kind of monitoring guys' minutes, because, you know, being that it's an exhibition, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe like they run a 13-guy rotation.
Well, I just say that because, you know, he mentioned how he's not like only 10 guys played in the. Unless they didn't sub it all. They didn't sub it all for the whole 25 or 20 minutes, whatever it is. And he's saying like, oh, we're not having any like flaming decisions based on Paradise Madness. So I feel like like you said, like they'll have like their starting lineup at the beginning of the game, and then like based on the flow of like who's performing well, who's got the hot hand, that's what they'll go with.
Yeah.
I doubt we'll see like 1-5 start at the beginning of the game and then 1-5 at halftime.
I mean, I'm curious to see what they do go with, being that it is an exhibition against
Right.
a Division II school. I mean, they're gonna win just off talent alone. I mean, it'd be curious if they didn't, but you never know.
No.
At any given time, anybody can get punched in the mouth. But
College basketball.
I just want to get into these quotes before we get into who we think. Jacobs did state that quote, fans will see the quote real lineup against Indiana State. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting quote, to put it that way, simply because, you know, if they have one starting lineup on the Saturday game and then they also have another exhibition against Auburn, in Auburn, on campus for Auburn University, he said that they don't even have an idea of who they plan on starting at that game. So we could see just a whole toss-up of different combinations for quote starting lineups and you know, closing lineups as well. Who they're going to play when they go when it's the middle of the game versus the beginning, things like that. It seems like this is just really a lot of them, him and the coaching staff, just kind of testing what they have. But I think if we're going to do a guess of what the starting lineup will be, I guess let's try to do it with the first regular season game against Indiana State. But he did also mention that that the starting lineup, it won't be kind of like how, like, it won't be concrete. What he emphasized is that it's really going to depend on matchups. And so if they play a school that has bigger guys on their lineup, they might go big. You know, we saw at the Paradise Madness scrimmage, we saw Baba Miller at that 4 spot, where Coach Jacobs said at the presser that he actually sees him as a long-term wing. And me and Cameron had spoke about this because I'm of the opinion, and I blame dudes like Anthony Davis for this, where dudes will be 6'10", 6'11", insane wingspans, and they just refuse to play in the paint. Just absolutely refuse to play in the paint on offense and on defense. But Jacobs says that he sees Baba being a long-term wing in both the NBA and for them
Why
in the league.
AD though? Like, why you hate on AD though?
Oh, I'm throwing a little shade at AD because he's kind of to me, he's the same mindset. Like, we don't really want to see him. He doesn't really want to be in the paint. He's made it clear when he first joined the Lakers like years ago that he doesn't want to play the center position.
I mean, you can make that argument about like Cat and like Jokic, I guess.
But Cat
too.
will play the center position, and Jokic will play the center position. AD has publicly vocalized that he doesn't want to play that center position. And now
Fair enough.
that I'm not trying. I am comparing apples to oranges here with Baba because he definitely does have the ability to play the 5, but it seems like the coaching staff, up until this point, at least sees him as the long-term 4 spot. And possibly even the 3, with there being 2 other 7-footers on the team, and you know, with Kocha having the ability to stretch the floor. But
I'll take the prediction for if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, no, we can slide
because mine
into
kind
it.
of like plays off what you're talking about here. So you know, I guess if we're talking like if I had to make a 5, mine would probably be like you said, or like I said, excuse me, probably Nico playing the point. And really, like you said, it's so interchangeable because you have like 2 different shooting guards who are in Kiki Tandy and Kevin Jr. that like were around 20-point scorers last year. But you know, I think I'd have to, you know, based on the scrimmage, probably defer to Ken Evans at shooting guard. Probably Caleb Glenn, like I said, playing 3, Baba playing 4, and Matis playing 5. But like I said, to your point that you were just talking about, you know, there's probably 3 different guys you could swap in and out of that because, you know, I really wouldn't be surprised if like someone like Leland Walker might get a start at point because Jake has talked about what like a leader and what an important role he's been so far, like leading up into the season. You know, I wouldn't be like Matis played great, but I would like Kocha, let's use that, looked pretty great himself. So like if he somehow ends up starting at the 5, because he's essentially a 7-footer as well, I really wouldn't be surprised. If they swapped out Ken Evans for Kiki Tandy, I wouldn't be surprised. So like you said, none of that is concrete. I won't be surprised at all if I'm completely wrong. Like I got 3 of those 5 wrong.
Yeah, I think if I had to go with the starting lineup, I would, being that Coach Jacobs has said that he does want to try to see how a 2-point guard lineup looks, I'd be interested in seeing Nicolo at the point, and then probably Kiki at the 2, simply because he was brought in to be that 3-point shooter. So they might want to see how that 3 guard looks. And I'll probably put Ken Evans at the 3, which is a little bit of an undersized wing, but I think with his build and getting eyes on him at that scrimmage, I think he'll have the ability to play that spot defensively. And then when you have Baba at the 4 and then Matas at the 5, I think that allows you a little bit of freedom to have that paint protected if a guy has to go by you. But if I had to go with the starting lineup for that first game against Indiana State, who will probably also be running a smaller lineup themselves, I think they'll go Nicolo at the point, Kiki at the 2, Ken Evans at the 3, and then we'll do Baba at the 4 and Matas at the 5. And then that leaves Leland coming off your bench. Probably he's going to be that first guy off the bench with Caleb Glenn, which I'm interested to see how that tandem looks. But what about you, Maddox?
So I remember when originally seeing all of the transfers coming in and people talking about, oh, these guys average double digits at this school, and this guy averaged double digits at that school. Made me think a lot of these guys have played different amount of minutes, different programs, but average a lot, like double-digit points per game. So you're expecting, most of these guys are expecting to be that starting lineup. So it's very difficult where you have about like 11 newcomers, and most of them have averaged double digits per game, and there's only 5 spots available. And of course, I didn't go to the Paradise Madness. I really didn't see exactly what you guys were talking about. But for my own, my opinion is for Whitefield, for the Indiana State starting lineup, I do think it'll be Kiki and Ken Evans, also because, this is bad journalism, but I didn't really know they were both like a graduate and a redshirt junior. I just saw them at the media day thing for men's basketball, then also on the road at the AAC men's basketball media day. So like, okay, bringing these 2 guys in, so you have a definite role with them. So I'm assuming, because Coach Jack has brought these 2 guys to the media day for the AAC, that means they're going to have definitive spots on the starting lineup.
And just to fact check you real quick, Ken Evans is a redshirt senior, and then Kiki Tandy is a graduate student, but they are both in their last year of eligibility. But please.
Yeah, so most likely they'll get a chance. Most likely they'll be like, and that's kind of like quote unquote starting lineup. Baba Miller, of course, obviously will be in that starting lineup. He had great stats with Florida State. I feel like going from Florida State, going from these other schools coming to FAU, you're expecting to have the opportunity to be that starting player. I feel like Baba will definitely be in that position. Probably Caleb Glenn, in my opinion. I feel like he might do as well, especially the 6'7" forward, tall player, basketball build. I feel like, especially him coming from Louisville, a transfer from Louisville, and he's coming from the AAC, the ACC. That's a tough basketball conference. So with that mentality and that experience as well, will be good for the starting lineup. And then you need a big, and the 2 bigs though are both freshmen. So that's also kind of very interesting to see. Both of them coming from overseas, both from Lithuania. As you were mentioning earlier, Cameron, how they will get to adapt from playing European basketball to playing college basketball. But I do feel like the 7-foot center, I think has a pretty good to have on their starting lineup for Indiana State. So I feel like Matas Bokatitis will also be. So that's my starting lineup: Kiki, Ken Evans, Caleb, Matas, and Baba.
Nice.
Yeah, we're definitely going to work on getting familiar with the roster, especially with new faces on the team. We're definitely a little spoiled.
And pronunciations will get better.
Pronunciations, no. Actually, looking at the men's basketball roster, courtesy of Athletics, they've put pronunciation guides for all the names, which is definitely a big help for us, especially dealing with 6 international players.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I'm just excited to be able to cover college hoops again. Especially FAU college hoops. They were ranked number 5 in the preseason coaches poll, the 5th team in the AAC, and which I think was honestly a pretty generous spot for them, being that this whole roster was practically made from scratch, and I believe all the international players have been listed as freshmen. So this is a really young team. I won't say that they're inexperienced, because when you have European basketball under your belt, I feel like that's just light years. That's like 3 years, a year of European basketball has got to be like 3 years of like high school basketball, just on the way that they play the game, and the sets that they run and the way that they're coached over there. It's definitely way different in comparison, but I think definitely for these 2 exhibition games, there's really nothing to lose. So I think this is going to be just a great opportunity for the fans and the coaching staff and everyone as a whole, just to see how the team looks and what lineup combinations look good as well. Because there's a lot of variety with this team. When you have 2 7-footers who pretty much operate that big position in different ways, and Matis and Kocha, one being that can stretch the floor, and one guy who is just a dominant force in the paint.
Right.
Well, I think my only fear is that I feel like a lot of people are gonna just see a 7-footer guy from Europe and be like, oh, like Vlad, you know what I mean? And I just think based on just the 20 minutes that we got to see from Matis, they're 2 completely different 7-footers.
I don't want to take anything too crazy away from like a 20-minute scrimmage, but he looked significantly more athletic than Vlad did, ever did. That was kind of
poster dunks. He was dribbling in transition. That was my one takeaway. There was like a loose ball, and I want to say that Matis came away with it. I want to say he grabbed it at like the opposite 3-point line, and he just took it down the middle for a breakaway dunk. It's obviously a scrimmage, so I think in like a real game situation against another school, they're probably going to track that down ASAP. But like when it's his teammates, they're obviously not going to try to make a play and risk injury. But I think that was
And one thing I wanted to add is like I doubt they'll be like reaching very deep like into the bag. A lot of these exhibitions have already started. Like Memphis played North Carolina last week, I want to say, and after the game, Coach Hardaway Penny came out and was like, "Oh, we didn't even run any sets."
What do you think about that? Because I saw that quote too.
A lot of people are like, "Oh, not a serious program," but like, I mean, I kind of understand.
No, like take the hating outside of Memphis. Like my thought process, like in a scrimmage, because I'm curious about this too for FAU.
Well, I mean, in scrimmage, like the Paradise Madness is different, I think, than like,
another team.
Than like even if it's an exhibition game, like you're going against another team. There's media members there, like covering it, whatever.
No, but so I bring that up for my point of like, so should all schools that are running exhibition matches, should they not run sets because of the sake of not giving anything away? I mean it's probably case by case, but I would assume with FAU's case, having such a whole new team put together, obviously they've been getting work in over the summer, so for the last few months now, so there's chemistry there. But when you're playing an opposite defense, I think in my opinion, I would want to see a few sets run.
To answer your question, against St. Leo,
you could probably just ball.
That's what I'm saying. Well, I doubt like Jacobs is saying like, oh, just go out there and play street ball. But like, I feel like again, it's an exhibition match. This is you have a huge talent gap, even with a completely new roster.
Their tallest dude is probably. I'm gonna look up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I got you.
But like, maybe against Auburn, a couple like 2 weeks from now, however long that is, maybe they'll be like reaching down like a little bit more, like showing a little bit more scheme wise. But against St. Leo, give and go, man. Like they really shouldn't like. Want to show too much, but they really shouldn't have to, I think. So like you said, like they have a whole new team, so they might want to try a couple things out just to see how like players are gelling together, especially when you're trying out different lineup combinations, like you're trying to see what works. So I'm sure they'll run like a couple, but I think maybe Auburn is when you'll see them like ramp up some like scheme stuff.
Yeah.
For me, with how they scheduled St. Leo, a Division II school out of Tampa.
Just to interject real quick, their tallest player is 6'7".
Oh. Really?
So got St. Leo, a Division II school, and they got Auburn. Again, exhibition game and then charity matchup, but Auburn, an SEC school. So I feel like them scheduling those two matchups are to show like different sides of the spectrum. One easy win, the other one against like this program. You're probably not going to face any other. You're not playing any other Division II programs in like rest of the season really, versus an SEC school where that past couple of years FAU has been played against SEC schools and beat them. So trying to see those two sides of how well this team is. But also I want to see is how well who's the definitive guys who will probably be on that starting roster against Indiana State. How well they mesh well with one another. And I think the biggest one is how well are the fans going to reciprocate how well the team plays. How are the fans? Are there going to be a lot of fans there? Are a lot of fans going to be invested? Even though a lot have changed, a lot of the big name players, big coach are all gone, and a bunch of new guys are coming in. Are they all still going to be devoted, or are they all going to like back off? Be like, let's just like wait until the first couple of games of the regular season and see if it's good or not. Because I remember my freshman year, of course I was like, very new there, but however, first couple of games, not that many people in the crowd. And once they were starting to win, a lot of people came into the stadium. And then the next season, a lot more people. That amount of people stayed the same throughout the rest of the season. So I want to see That's another big thing I want to see is how well are the fans going to show support to the program, if they're actually going to show up and show out, or even those exhibition games, still like basketball season. But are they going to like show up and show out, or are they going to be like, let's just give it some time, and if they're good, we'll invest. If not, then probably hop off like the bandwagon or whatever.
I would say that there's an appetite now for basketball at FAU.
Especially how like the football team plays too. Everyone's like, let's win.
Yeah, we're looking right. I would definitely say that might play a role. That's hilarious, Maddox. But my main point is
they not only don't have someone taller than 6'7", they don't have a listed center.
Yeah.
They only have their forwards.
Right.
That
So
6'7" gentleman is a forward.
So correction. Their tallest player is Alex Sherwood, listed as 6'8".
Excuse me, and he's a forward as well. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So they don't have
a listed center, which is I guess kind of expected of a Division II school.
Not really. Like, why don't you have a center? That does not make sense.
Yeah. I mean, shout out St. Leo, I guess. But. Yeah, I think to answer your question, Maddox, I just think there's an appetite for basketball. You know, I think it's kind of one of those things. I can't think of like an analogy, one of my specialty JD analogies, but just like when you're used to eating a certain size of plate of food, you know, you don't start eating less. Your appetite is only going to grow more and more. Yeah. So I think for this game being a scrimmage, maybe a lot of people won't be too invested in it. I think there's going to be plenty of people who are interested in seeing how the team looks, in a game-like setting. And I think, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of a mix of both, where maybe the turnout for that first game is really good on Saturday, and then maybe the regular season it dies down. But I think that first impressions are everything, and I think that that is definitely maybe the plan when they scheduled St. Leo as a home scrimmage, a home exhibition match for the Owls, where if they can just get away with it really quick, and they have some great plays, great threes, monster dunks. I think that'll really word of mouth will travel quick that it was a really exciting game, and that they're playing an entertaining brand of basketball. Because I think that's one thing that Jake has really stressed since he's been here on campus, is that obviously they want to win, and winning does equal getting people in the seats, but it also has to be an entertaining brand of basketball. But I think going into this game on Saturday, just once again looking at St. Leo's roster, I think they might want to just play through their bigs and see how that their defense reacts to that, and seeing what they can do from there. Being that they're probably going to have a 6'8" guy cover Matis, who's a 7-footer. He's probably going to be getting doubled immediately. So I'm interested in seeing how the rest of the team reacts to that on offense. But yeah, I mean, I think it is very interesting, the stark contrast in an exhibition game against a Division II school versus the preseason number 11 team in the country. But I think it's a great opportunity for these European players, these overseas players, to get a taste of what Division I Power 5 conference basketball schools look like. Because eventually, I'm sorry.
They're gonna play Florida State before FAU though.
Florida State?
Yeah.
FAU?
They're playing Florida State, then FAU, then Miami.
Who's that?
Who are you
St. Leo?
Yeah, St. Leo.
Oh, I
Oh.
thought you were mentioning FAU plays Florida State. I was like, I'm not aware.
Oh yeah, and I don't care what the rest of St. Leo schedules looks
No,
like.
'cause
Respect.
That's a
like
ringer. Jeez, for
They're
a
probably
D2
getting
team.
they're probably
like,
getting mad bread.
I mean,
to
I'm
do
sure,
that
I hope
too.
so. But, sheesh,
But,
that's a
um,
oof.
But yeah, I don't even know where to go from there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the team looks on Saturday, and we'll have our thoughts on that. So I hope you guys, if you guys, I assume it's probably not going to be televised. Are you going to be there on Saturday? I plan on being
TBD.
there.
TBD.
TBD.
Yeah, I'm gonna be covering that for radio.
Okay, cool. So we'll have thoughts on the first exhibition. I want to say that the Auburn one might be televised because it's like a charity thing, and I know that the Memphis UNC one was televised, but it'll probably be on like SEC Network or something like that. So gonna have to do some digging on where to find that. But that's pretty much all I think we have for FAU basketball. We have about 10 minutes to work with here. And if there's any reason why I'm wearing an NBA PJ Tucker Miami Heat jersey, it would only be for one reason, and that's because the NBA is back. Opening night today, we have Knicks versus Celtics at 7:30, and then we have the Timberwolves versus the Lakers at 10 o'clock. I think the biggest thing that is, the main thing that I'm going to be thinking about this whole season is that might be the final time that we'll be seeing the Inside the NBA crew, who is on broadcast for the two opening night games tonight, TNT Sports. They did not get their contract renewed for the media rights with the NBA, and this might be the last time we see Shaq, Chuck, Kenny, and Ernie all in a table like this, talking some ball. Obviously, to me, probably the most like, I think when dudes or just people in the media as a whole just like start their shows, if there's any show that they wish they could kind of model their game after, I feel like it would be Inside the NBA. But that's the one thing that I'm really, trying to enjoy and treasure for this season is anytime there's a game on TNT, I'm going to try to make my best to make the time to watch it, because that's just an absolutely legendary team over there that is sometimes more entertaining than some of the games that we get.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't want to, it's sad because I really thought that somehow that would like keep going, because I feel like it's one of the only shows in sports that's just like universally loved. Like even
there's people that don't care about ball that'll watch it. Right,
and there's even like the best of I can think of like football coverage. I really enjoy NFL Live on ESPN, but even there's some people like who don't care for that. Everybody loves Inside the NBA. Everybody. There's no one has a bad thing to say about that. And just like I think they have like better chemistry than like any sports show I can really think of. Someone might disagree with me.
Not easy, I know we make it look easy, but it's not easy to have a panel of four people going at once.
It's not.
Especially like with Chuck and Shaq and then both of them just like beefing up.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, I think
that's camera night right there.
That's you guys are definitely Shaq and Chuck. Megan is probably Kenny, and then I feel like just me being the moderator of things, I gotta be good old Ernie. But
I mean, it's just crazy how conversational they come across, and like how well it flows with four people. Like to your last point, like it's hard. Like you hear us, we talk over each other all the time. They're really good about like keeping it conversational. So if this is the last time, it's tough.
It definitely gonna have to enjoy it. And I think what always cracks me up that I always go to when I need a chuckle is just like Inside the NBA compilations. There's so many good moments. Shaq eating the like ghost pepper chip when he was like not trying to make a face. When Chuck pushed Shaq into the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the one where Kenny Smith is trying to imitate that Kobe video, like him jumping over the car and Ernie with the car.
I don't think I've seen that one. Have you seen the one where? I think this one's a classic, but Chuck talking about those women in San Antonio.
I was going to say, I was going to wait for y'all to go. Those are my favorite.
Yeah,
but
classics.
We'll leave it at that.
But definitely, I would say to all the fans that weren't aware, make sure that you tune into Inside the NBA, because I'm definitely going to make it my mission to do that. But being that we're at game 0 of 82 games of the season for every single team, I think we're going to do way too early predictions. And what I wanted to do is give out our awards and our predictions. We'll be graduated by the time that these awards are given out, but hopefully I keep it in the back of my mind that this is what I said. And I want us to give out all the hardware now of who we think is going to walk away with MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year. We got Sixth Man of the Year. This is going to require some ball knowledge. But I think that the NBA is just at a point where there's just absolutely so much parity that you can have some favorites, but I just think you're not going to know who's going to win until you really get to the end of the season. Because I want to say these last few MVP races have been close, but I think it's definitely it's always a mixture of stats and storylines and things like that. But for me, for my MVP, I think it's probably going to have to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. When you look at the last 6 MVPs that we've had in the NBA, they've all been foreign players. It's been Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid. So I think Shai's going to keep that going as a Canadian player. OKC was the #1 seed last year, and you can argue that they got way better. They honestly might be too deep for their own good. So that'll be, I think he has the best case there. Being if they go on the #1 seed, if they're the #1 seed again, then why not give it to the player who's probably going to average 30. So that's my pick for MVP. What about you? I already go ahead, Maddox.
And actually, I was going to say, I do agree. I think it would be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Okay.
I mean, how he played well last season, averaging like 30-plus points per game. I feel like he's going to keep that momentum up. Especially, I didn't know that about the past 6 MVPs were foreign players. I feel like he'll probably keep that up. Again, a young roster he's working with, but I still think he'll get the ball primarily more still being the most, I think still the most experienced, which Alex Cruz is on the team, but the second or third most guy experience on that team. And I feel like with how their playing scheme, they'll probably have him have the ball most. And I feel like he's still young enough. I feel like he can get a MVP trophy.
Gentlemen, I hate to inform you that the 24-25 NBA MVP will be
it'll
be Anthony Edwards, I think. I just think right now this is his season that he becomes he officially steps into that best player in the league type conversation. I'm not saying he's overtaking anybody, but I think because after last season slaying 2 giants in the playoffs, having a really great performance in the Olympics, I just think people recognize him now as one of the top players in the league, and that will go into just I don't want to say name recognition, but that recognition as he's held as one of the best players in the league will mean a lot come voting time. And I think with Karl Anthony Towns now gone, he's going to be taking, I don't want to say an increased role because I don't really know how much bigger it can get, but I think he's going to be taking sort of a bigger load. And I think you might see him kind of like Shai was last year, slip into that higher scoring maybe type season. And another thing, just the way he plays, man, he has some people don't believe in this type of thing, but he plays with a killer type mentality. So
People compare him to MJ though.
I see it, but our son saw someone say he plays he's going for the jugular, and that I think that kind of he plays with that killer type mentality.
You think you could hold up that motor for 82 games though? Because I think one. Before you even go on, I feel like that's kind of a lost art almost. But if I'm thinking anybody can, I think it's him. Because one, I'm pretty sure it was him. Maybe someone fact check me. He came out and was was he not the one who was I want to play an entire type of season? But he seems again that killer type of mentality. Some people might not believe in it. Yeah.
But I think someone like him who plays like that would be the type of player to go 82, I think.
Yeah, I think barring any, all these predictions are barring any injuries. The only reason I go with Shai over Ant is simply because I think that seeding is going to play a huge role. It seems to always play a huge role in MVP. But I think it's also fairly interesting that this is, if you look at the last 6 MVPs that I mentioned, they're all pretty much big men. Giannis obviously plays that power forward spot, but he's a big guy. And it's been a while since I feel like we've seen an MVP a guard win MVP. I want to say that the last guard to win MVP was Steph Curry, off the top of my head.
That I can think of. Yeah.
That I can think of. If not, it's always been a forward. So yeah, I think the game's in a really good spot if these are 2 MVP candidates. But I could go either way. But I'm just giving the slight edge to Shea because I think that his team will probably have a better record. But
James Harden.
Harden. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Dang. That's my guy. But right, and that required a huge scoring output. But I think that's definitely a good analysis there. That with Karl Anthony Towns out of there may be more pressure on Anthony Edwards to kind of do it all. And I usually like to give the edge to the guy who plays defense as well. So. I don't know. I'm going to stand on business with my choice, but I think Ant is definitely a close second. As far as like a dark horse, I couldn't. Jokic, I feel like is always a safe spot, a safe choice.
Though.
Boring pick. I think the voter fatigue has gotten to the voters. But all right, moving on to our next award for Defensive Player of the Year. Gonna go biased here. I think it has to be Bam Adebayo. I took a little sneak peek at Cam's choice, and I'll have a rebuttal for that, but I'm just going to go with Bam Adebayo. I think it's long overdue that he gets this Defensive Player of the Year trophy, and it really is going to just depend on how well the Heat play this season and how great that team defense is, because I think that's been a huge contributor to why he hasn't gotten it yet with the team defense, just, not statistically speaking, not being on par. But he's the best individual defender in the league, in my opinion. Defends 1 through 5, and the Heat defense, he anchors that Spoelstra defense really well, and I just think it's long overdue. So with now all defensive teams and all NBA teams now being positionless, he has his first team defense under his career belt, and I think he adds some hardware to that.
Mm-hmm.
Maddox, you want to go?
Yeah. So I feel like if Nikola Jokic isn't going to be getting like that MVP award, I feel like he will get that Defensive Player of the Year.
Jokic?
I feel like probably.
He'd have to turn something around.
All right, you're trolling.
I mean, I'll say mine.
You're trolling, Maddox.
I'll say though for mine, I feel like for Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man, you're kind of grasping at straws a little bit. Besides MVP, but if I think a really candidate, you said you have a rebuttal. Wembanyama, he's a player who I think last year surprised a lot of people with how well he was able to defend. And I think similar to the rest of his game this season, I think his defense will probably grow the most, just because we saw it last year. He's so athletic. At 7, whatever. Do we know?
4, 5,
something
6.
7 and some odd number. So I just think it's hard to be a bad defender when you can move like that at 7'4". And sort of like the same thing I said with Anthony Edwards. I think Wembanyama in his second season is going to take another step into that one of the best players. Maybe not same as Ant, like a top 2, 3 player, but into that top 10 conversation officially. And again, I feel like that's something that's going to help with come voting time.
Yeah, no, I think Wembanyama is probably overwhelmingly the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year in sports books.
But before you rebut, the one thing I'll say maybe not is because kind of like you said about Bam, he can defend 1 through 5. I don't know if Wembanyama is as good as guarding a guard.
I think when you're that tall and you can, shuffle your feet as well as Wemby can, you just put an arm up. But we have seen dudes like Steph Curry, who are Hall of Fame players who could probably score on anybody. So I don't take that away from Wemby. My only rebuttal for why Bam will get it over him is because, and this is probably maybe a terrible reason, but I think everyone is kind of getting the sense that Defensive Player of the Year is just going to be Wembanyama's award for possibly the rest of his career. Not necessarily, but I think he already wowed voters. He was first team all defense as a rookie, which we haven't seen in a really long time. So I think this is just Bam's time to get it now, because I think it's going to be Wembanyama's to lose for the rest of.
Do you really think voters care about that though? Like,
I think because I want to say it's the same people that I want to say like maybe over 50% of the voters are the same voters year in and year out.
Right.
And so
I think right.
Bam has been like he's finished top 5 defensive player of the year for like the last few years now. So I just think if he puts up a good enough campaign, a campaign equal to Wemby, I still feel like Wemby might get some of that, like, you know, new to the league kind of treatment from voters, and that's what will give Bam the edge. But the voters and the metrics obviously love blocks. So I think it'll be up to Bam to really make sure that he's stuffing the stat sheet, because once we start getting to advanced metrics like Raptor and like LeBron, like some of these made up stats that I have no idea about, like that's where Bam really shines. You know, there's advanced stats like how well he does on switches and stuff like that, how many stops he's getting per possessions and things like that.
See, my thing though is
they'll
that
be tracked
like
differently.
People make that kind of argument, and I know it's like comparing apples to oranges, like you said earlier. People make that kind of argument about Myles Garrett, like only the like ridiculous advanced metrics that no one can possibly understand. Like, says he's good. Like people make the joke that like people have to make up stats so that Myles Garrett's good. Do you not like think people will kind of like take the same attitude to that?
Well, I like your point, because, right, and I think this is kind of to keep it on football, it's the same thing with cornerbacks, right? A lot of people who maybe are only looking at the stat sheet, they'll look at a corner and be like, oh, well, this corner's better than that one because he has more interceptions. Like, I think about Sauce Gardner. He only has 1 interception, I want to say, this season. And I had a friend who was like, oh, wow, DeMar Hamlin has as many interceptions as Sauce Gardner, but Sauce Gardner isn't getting the ball thrown at him. You know
so
what I mean?
Compare that to basketball for me.
So if Bam isn't getting those blocks or those steals simply because he's just locking dudes up one-on-one and forcing bad shots, that's forcing players into bad shots is probably an advanced stat that you're not going to see on a regular box score. Versus Wembanyama, who's probably going to average 3 blocks a game simply because of his frame. But I wouldn't say that simply, you know, blocks and steals makes you a better defender. You know what I mean? In comparison to Bam. And I just think it's going to come down to the voters and the eye test. The problem is, and the problem being with all these awards when they're voter based, is that you can't really track how many games or which games these voters are watching. And so it's really going to come down to how many Heat games are they watching, how many Spurs games are they watching. Wembanyama is obviously going to have the edge, since his games are probably going to be way more nationally televised than any Miami Heat games. But as far as my bias, I think we can both agree that Nikola Jokic pick was just.
I'm just surprised Maddox hasn't said a Celtic yet. Like, when is it coming? But should we do rookie?
Rookie of the year, and then honestly, 6 man. Like I'm down to just skip that one.
I would say that's just grasping at straws. I feel like.
Rookie of the year. I feel like every year everyone always wants to give it to the number 1 overall pick.
Before you go any further, yes, I saw that like the one I looked at, Zachary Risache has the highest odds. I forget what service that was, but that seemed odd to me. I don't know if
I want to say, you know, we had conversations about this probably like last semester in spring,
maybe,
yeah, when we were talking about the level of talent in the draft class, and when you look at some of these names, there's. You know, looking at the sports books and the odds and stuff like that, I mean, there's really nobody that I love for a Rookie of the Year pick. A lot of sports books have Zach Edey as the favorite, which I think is an interesting choice, because coming into draft season, people were questioning if he was even a first-round pick. But if I had to go just based on skill and also mixing in opportunity, I'm probably going to go with Reed Sheppard, the 3rd overall pick with Houston, because that team was in dire need of some spacing and some shooting, and he looks to be the most polished rookie in the lottery. And I think there's a great chance that he starts simply because that roster is in dire need of a floor spacer, and they have tons of talent with Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. You know, a lot of guys who have the ability to get doubled and get into the paint. And if that provides a lot of opportunities for Reed Sheppard to get spot-up shots, I think he's going to hit those. So, you know, Rookie of the Year has never been award that's given to the team with the best record. It's really about who has the best individual performances. And although there are a lot of mouths to feed on that roster, I just think that Reed Shepherd's going to make the most of his opportunities with the ball. And I think if he puts up, some crazy shooting splits and he can average at least double-digit points, I think he'll have it in the bag. Because I'm not too sure about Alexander Sarr or Zachary Ricochet.
I'll say about Zachary Ricochet, he's the least I've heard about a number 1 pick, I think, in my life. Like, he got drafted and then I never heard a thing about him ever again.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to see how he plays. But my pick would be, and again, we're just grasping at straws here. Dalton Connect. I really think Bronny James is going to be really disappointing. I think in that kind of void, in that void, I think Dalton Connect is going to really shine because sort of like you talked about Reed Shepherd, a lot of, basketball heads, whatever, talk about just kind of how NBA ready and polished he is. They're saying Dalton Connect is one of those guys who's more, NBA ready than anyone. And unlike Reed Shepherd, I want to say Dalton Connect is significantly older, like 3 or 4 years older than Reed Shepherd. And a lot of people, like, during the draft held that against him, which doesn't make sense to me. I think having a lot of, like, basketball games under your belt, especially Dalton Connect, a lot of them, he looked really good. He was, like, one of the best players on the floor in a lot of those. I think that will help him. And, playing on Lakers doesn't hurt, I don't think.
Yeah, Lakers buyers definitely will probably play a role in that. I'm gonna have to clip that.
What?
That Bronny James stray was hilarious.
Have you seen the stat lines? Don't watch box scores, but like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely think that's a good point. I think my one concern for him is just the opportunity, but he did look really good in those preseason games.
Connect or Bronny?
Connect.
Okay, I was about to
Connect.
say.
Bronny James is getting.
But I think so many people are going to be tuning into those games to watch LeBron and Bronny, and I'm just of the opinion that this was a bad idea for them. It's cool, very cool. I've said that, but from just watching Summer League and watching preseason, it just doesn't look how you'd want it to look by now.
I'm gonna put it on the show sheet for us to talk about next week because I have lots of opinions about how serious the Lakers are as a franchise.
It's cool to see. But from what we've seen so far, which doesn't really mean that much, it just doesn't look like you'd want to. I really don't think he's gonna be that great, and that when people are watching, the rookie that they're gonna see is Dalton Connect, in my opinion.
I like the pick. He can definitely score the ball.
Sniper.
Yeah. Maddox, who you got to close us out?
Brownie James, I'm joking.
Back-to-back troll picks.
All right, so I got Isaiah Collier. I feel like the Jazz are a little bit young. I feel like with Isaiah Collier, I feel like he has a better opportunity to get more playing time. And so, yeah, I feel like he has a better opportunity for playing time. So go for Isaiah Collier.
Niche pick.
Yeah, no, I forgot that he definitely did get picked up by the Utah Jazz. An interesting
overall, yeah.
Yeah, an interesting team that I'll be interested in looking at. They have a lot of guys that I would like to see on other teams because I'm not really sure the direction of that franchise. I also really like their coach. I forget his name, but
I feel like a wallowing
franchise. If you're a college basketball dude, that was a college basketball pick right there.
I feel like if you're like on a wallowing franchise, that kind of, for Rookie of the Year, not for any other award, kind of like plays into your, favor a little bit. Because if you're a rookie and you're on a really bad franchise and you can like force your team to a couple wins, I think that plays into your favor.
I think if we're looking
more
at
than like a rookie who's just like kind of playing like a fourth best scorer type role on a really good team.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the players that got drafted just based on the odds, there's really not too many players that have been drafted into terrible positions. Alexander Sarr, number 2 overall, picked to Washington, probably has a really good chance. Bub Carrington, who's a guard, who also got drafted to Washington. They have virtually almost the same odds. I'm also interested to see how Donovan Clingan does. That's another team in the Portland Trail Blazers.
What does John Fanta call him? Like Kling Kong or something like that? That's such a dope nickname.
Yeah, absolute beast out of UConn. I'm interested to see how he plays, for Portland Trail Blazers team that also really has no direction. But it'll be interesting to see how all this pans out. So we'll definitely be, coming back to this in April, and we'll see how off we are. But we're coming we're probably over our hour time, so we're going to close out here. Thank you guys all for watching so much. But before we do that, Maddox, where can the people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at MaddoxBlade04 and on Twitter at Maddox Greenberg.
You guys can follow me on Instagram at JD_Delcastillo and on Twitter, JD_Delcastillo.
You can find me on Twitter at CamPriester247.
We'll have updates on if we plan on having a show next week. I believe we will.
We should.
We
should have 2 next week, actually.
Yeah, we should have 2. Everything TBD. Mitchell, our producer, is shaking his head in the back. But once again, thanks for tuning into UPress Play. We'll have shows for you next week.